Greg, we were talking about the future of print journalism. Can you enlighten us on what your opinion is about
that?
Sure.
Have you both
worked for the government and also for the Express News?
Yeah, I mean, I worked at the Express News for 12 years, 2 of them as business editor. So I really feel for the layoffs last week. I mean, you always hate to hear of journalists, going out of work, because those are fewer stories that are going to get told, fewer facts that are going to be put out there. I think the reality for newspapers, including the Express News, is they're just, I think there's a place for them and will be for decades to come, but it's not going to be what it was 10 years ago, not 5 years ago. I think, unfortunately, probably the downsizing for most newspaper newsrooms is not over with. I think it's going to continue shrinking as they do more of their reporting online. And they're still trying to figure out the ad revenue balance between the paper product and their online product. But what you're seeing is, that doesn't mean a diminishment in the amount of information coming to the public. Whereas newspapers may be declining in their penetration, in their reach. You see news websites, community news outlets rising. In San Antonio, you've got the Rivard Report. And you're seeing a lot of reinvestment by Texas Public Radio, KLRN, KSAT's doing a lot of really interesting work. You're seeing television news stations doing more online. And let me throw in a plug for the Current. We're also investing more in our both paper product and our digital product. You're just going to see more of that because the demand for information doesn't go away.
And I think that what weeklies have known and has worked for weeklies in the past throughout the country, the ones who've done well, is the hyper-local approach works. That people want, and maybe that's where the daily newspapers are going to have to go instead of maybe trying to be all things to all people. That we're going to really just concentrate our resources on telling the stories that nobody else, or at least nobody outside of that community, can tell, and focusing on that. And I think that's what weekly papers have done successfully over the years.
Now, Warren Buffett, whose Berkshire Hathaway owns a number of newspapers, has said that with the exception of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and USA Today, the newspapers have no future. You feel that he is too pessimistic considering the situation on the ground?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I just think that people. I know that there's a hunger for local news, and at the Express News we just started a political podcast, and we're getting people. People are saying, "Well, I've been wanting this local information." People want it, but you have to put it in a form that I think connects with it.
I'd also point out that kind of the obvious, like the Express News continues to have the largest newsroom in this city. It's shrinking and other newsrooms are growing, but it's still the biggest. You can't ignore that. And the paper may be losing circulation, pretty considerably actually, but they're doing a lot more online. And that counts for something. I haven't been privy to Express News's online numbers for a while, but my guess is they're probably heading in the right direction. Maybe not great, but good.
Now, one other thing that we didn't have an opportunity to talk about in the TV part, but we both discussed it earlier, and it's an interesting situation as the city prepares to put its budget together for fiscal 19, is that several city officials made presentations at the initial budget hearing expressing concern that the rising cost of housing is pricing more and more people out of their homes. A stunning percentage of San Antonio homeowners are what they call distressed homeowners, meaning they spend more than the recommended amount of their income on housing. And we have a situation, as you both mentioned, where housing prices have been rising in the city far faster than wages. Gilbert, how's that affecting the general conversation at City Hall?
Yeah, I think that is people are scared about it, and they don't know how much control the city has or what the city can actually do. There's no real simple solution. I think that historically, as someone who used to live in Austin, Austin was the place where creative people, where artists, where musicians who didn't necessarily make a lot of money could live, and it was affordable, and we saw how that changed, and a lot of people were forced to move out of Austin because that has become such an expensive city to live in. And I think San Antonio, has gotten there's been some bleed from Austin into San Antonio, because San Antonio was, relatively speaking, among large cities, was a pretty affordable place, and that is changing. And I think it scares people, but so we talk about, that's why we start hearing on the state level revenue caps and these kinds of things, but people don't really know. there isn't really a simple solution.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, if you're a city council member, you can consider maybe doing a big, homestead tax exemption for everybody, not just seniors, but everybody. Okay, well, you do that, and then you've taken a huge chunk out of the general fund, because property taxes are part of what feeds the general fund. So you're talking about spending less at a time the city is growing and its infrastructure needs are improving, and there's more demand for garbage pickup and library hours and senior services. I mean, it's a tough thing to balance.
One thing to wrap up, one thing I thought was interesting is that at the budget workshop, and you probably got the handouts as well, they had the results of the SA Speak Up survey, and they asked people what more money should be spent on, and at the bottom of the list was public safety. At the very bottom was people did not think that more money needs to be spent on police and fire. Number 1 was streets, number 2 was sidewalks, number 3, interestingly enough, was animal control. So that's a change too from what we've seen.
Part of what that tells you is we're not going through a really high crime period right now. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for The Conversation Continues. Greg Jefferson, Editor-in-Chief, San Antonio Current. Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.